Good morning, everyone. This is Victoria Beal with the Ohio LTAP Center, and we are going to go ahead and get the webinar started. I've got 10 o'clock on my computer. For those of you who've joined us who haven't yet muted your phone line, I ask that you please do during the presentation. We'll accept questions in the chat pod, which is in the bottom left-hand side of your screen, throughout the webinar, and we're more than happy to open the phone lines up at the end, but it just makes it a little easier if our presenter is able to make the presentation without having to stop throughout the presentation, because he does have a number of things that he wants to be able to show you. Also, as you've joined the webinar, I have made you an attendee. We've done this, so we'll be able to keep moving through the presentation without anybody inadvertently clicking the wrong button and causing a disruption during the webinar. So if you have questions, feel free to put them in that bottom left-hand corner chat pod, and I will read them off to Stephen as he's going through the presentation. Stephen, are you ready?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Great. I can hear you. Thank you, and I see your screen, so we're good. Take it away.
All right. Thanks, Victoria. So my name is Steve Hale. I am in the Office of Technical Services here at ODOT, central office here. And today what I want to do is show you some of the tools and data that's available to you through the TIMS application. So this will be a live demo. As always with live demos, there might be a glitch here and there. Just bear with me. But what I'll try to do is show you what you can do with the TIMS application. So for those who don't know or who have never used the TIMS application, TIMS stands for Transportation Information Mapping System, and what this is ODOT's kind of data portal. So we have lots of different data at ODOT, lots of different managers of data, and TIMS kind of pulls all this data from different offices or agencies within ODOT and organizes it into one central location. So you can use the TIMS application to find this data, to query this data, or to just download this data if that's your end goal. So the first things first, in order to get to the TIMS application, we do have a URL that you can jot down, gis.dot.state.oh.us/TIMS, T-I-M-S. This is publicly available. You can get to it from any computer that has internet. We also do have a mobile version. In order to get to the mobile version, you can just type in that same URL to your mobile browser. If you can't remember that, from the ODOT homepage, if you scroll down just a little bit, on the left-hand side under Maps and References, there is also a link to the TIMS site. All right, so I'm just going to dive in now. This is the TIMS homepage. From our homepage, you have various buttons that will take you to different pages. We will touch on every single one of these today, briefly for some, a little more detail for others. But also from the homepage, there are a few links down at the bottom that might be helpful for you. First, there is a help link. Everything that we discussed today in this webinar should be covered here in this help guide. It looks like my Wi-Fi is taking a second to download, but this is a PDF that just walks you through all the tools that are available to you in the TIMS site. So if you ever have any questions, concerns, how do I get information, how do I build queries, this might be your first stop to get more information about how to use the TIMS site. And again, that is under the help link. There's also a contact link. If you ever have any questions or concerns about the functionality or the data available to you in TIMS, you can go ahead and send an email to this site here, or to this email address, and that'll come directly to me and my colleague, and we will try to answer that question as quickly as we possibly can. There's also a snail mail address too, if that's your preferred method of contact. And then there's a news button here that gives you some information about upcoming trainings, and if we are doing some database releases or application enhancements, we might put some news snippets here under the news section. So we do have some in-person trainings through the LTAP office coming up. I think on this particular flyer we only have one more, and that is in District 12 on June 12th. And that is a free training if there are still spots available. But we will have 3 more throughout the rest of the year. And then I would imagine once the second half of the year starts, we will post that flyer on here. All right, so when you navigate away from the home page, you'll notice that all these buttons up top also link to the same buttons that you see on the home page. You can use these to navigate through the TIMS site. You can use the back button, or you can click on this TIMS logo here to take you back to the home page. So I'm just going to jump right into the project search page. And what this is we have a project database here at ODOT that we refer to as ELIS. So ELIS stores information, project information, about planned projects and previous projects. And what TIMS does is it pulls project information that has committed federal funding tied to it. So if there's a project that was planned for 2030 that has funding tied to it already, that is going to show up in the TIMS application. So we have future projects, we have current projects, and then we do have some history going back to 2003. So you'll notice a few elements here of the project search page. You have a couple options up top to filter the project searches. And then you have a results table down below. So this results table is a theme that's going to repeat itself throughout the TIMS app from time to time. But this results table is currently showing all of the project records that we have in our database, in our TIMS database. If I wanted to expand this, the number of results that I see, I can click this drop down. I can see 5, 10, 25, or 50 results at a time. For the purpose of this training, I'm just going to keep it to 5 because it's easier to scroll up and down. But you can see that I'm showing 56,000 records from our ELIS database. So that might be way too many. You might want to first start with building a query to limit that down to what you're looking for. So you can do so up top here. You can start to choose a district. So I will choose District 6. And notice as I apply any of those filters, the table below is going to change dynamically. So now from 56,000 results, I'm down to just 5,600 results. I can now add a county. Any one of these search boxes, you can actually start to type text, and it'll return only the text that meets that criteria. So if I type in FRA, the only option here is Franklin. And so now with District 6 Franklin County chosen, I'm all the way down to 1,900 results. So you can continue this further by choosing a primary work category, a fiscal year or a calendar year. You can choose a date range. And you can also use this search bar just above the results table to search any of the fields that are visible in that results table. So one application of this search bar would be if you wanted to search by, say, a route. I could type in a route number, and we do pad all of our route numbers with leading zeros to make 5 characters. So if I type in 00070, that returns everything that has the 70 route number. So you can use this search also to search, say, a primary work category. And as I type in the text, it filters my results table real time. So let's say I built a query and I found a particular project that I'm interested in. So from here in the results table, I can click on the magnifying glass, and this will take me to the project information page. So this project information page gives you more information about that particular project. So it gives you some location information. Where did this project occur? Some more information about what type of project it is. If it was a pavement project, what type of pavement treatment was used? What is the status of this project? Is it awarded? Is it planned? Is it completed? What were some of the estimated costs of this project and the dates associated with this project? And where did those project funds come from? If there was a bridge associated with this particular location, it would show you some information about that bridge here too. Down below there is some additional information, and you can actually click on the project plans URL, and that takes you to an external site managed by the Office of Contracts here at ODOT, that then you can click and download or view the PDF plans here. And you can search through the plans. So I'm going to scroll back up to the top, and there are two more buttons just under the project information. One is View and Map, and what this does is this takes you to our Create a Map page, and it highlights that project on the map. So you can see that project is highlighted here, and now you can interact with that data in our Create a Map page, and you can see exactly where that project is taking place. We're going to come back to this page in a minute, but if I navigate back, there's another button called View in Ellis. This is not the actual Ellis site that internal ODOT employees use. Rather, it's a publicly available portal that gives you some more information about that particular project. So you can come here and you can see all of the bridges associated with that project and what treatments were used. Perhaps see all the schedule data that's tied to this particular project. So there's a lot more information that is actually stored in the Ellis database than we are actually pulling and exposing in the TIMS site. And then if I navigate back one more, back to my Transportation Project Search page, you'll notice that my filters that I've applied are automatically applied again, with the exception of this search bar. So this dynamic search tab, you have to type in that search every single time you come here. But it will remember, the site will remember the previous search that you applied. For better or worse, if you're working in the same area, perhaps the same district or county, it is going to remember that filter next time you come into the search page. You might also notice that I have some projects in here that have the same project ID, or what we call PID here at ODOT. That just means that for this particular project, for this particular PID, there are multiple work locations tied to it. If I wanted to see all of these work locations in the map at the same time, what you could do is you could click on your results table and highlight each record. And then above the results table, there's a View and Map button. That View and Map button will take you back to the Create a Map page. And now you can see that on top of just that linear segment there, I now have a couple bridges that are highlighted as well. So that's just useful to see all of the project locations on the map at the same time. Now you might just want to download this data. So you might be interested in a project that you just need to download the information and use it in your own system or Excel, whatever it might be. You can do the same thing and select the records that you want to download. And then next to the View and Map button, there is an Export Data. So this allows you to export to Excel, to KMZ, which you can view in Google Earth. You can export to a shapefile or a geodatabase if you are a GIS user. So you click on Download, it'll spin for a second, and then once it's done spinning, my download button is going to be enabled, and I can click Download, and that should open up a zip folder with your downloaded records. There it is. So you might also notice throughout the TIMS site, we have this search bar up in the upper right-hand corner. and also on the home page, and that allows you to quickly search by a PID. So if you have a project ID that a contractor gave you, or whatever that might be, you could type that into the search by PID, and that'll take you directly to the project search page, and you don't have to worry about building those filters or queries. Alright, so from the project search page, I'm going to jump right into the Create a Map page. Now, Create a Map is kind of the meat and potatoes of TIMS, I like to say, because this is where you're going to come to find all of the data that we have published in TIMS. This is where you're going to come to analyze the data, to query it, and then eventually you can download the data here from Create a Map. So if you maybe if you use the TIMS system, but it's been a couple years, you'll notice that there are some differences here to create a map. The first thing is the old format, you used to have to scroll up and down to access the layers and then scroll back up to see the map, or maybe scroll down to access the tools. What we've done is we've made this a full screen view here, so you can access all of your layers and tools and not have to worry about scrolling away from the map, and you can see all of the different elements of TIMS all on your desktop without having to scroll. So the first thing you'll notice is this big Create a Map page, the actual map viewer. You can click and drag on the map. You can zoom in and out using your mouse wheel. It's very intuitive, just like you would a Google Maps or a Google Earth or something like that. We do have a couple windows. So on the left-hand side, this is our tool pane. So this is where you're going to come to interact with all of your layers. And the Set Visible Layers tool is turned on by default. But when you start to enable some other tools, this is where you're going to interact with all those tools as well. You can click on the edge here of each one of these windows, make them as large or as small as you want to see them. Or if you just want to view the map and you want to minimize that, you can click this arrow, this blue arrow, and it'll completely minimize that toolbar. Same for the bottom results table. So once we start to build some queries, you'll see that this results table will then have a purpose. It will have some data in there that you can interact with. But until then, if you want to minimize that, you can either make it smaller or just click the minimize button, and it'll get rid of that particular toolbar for the time being. So when you first open up Create a Map, you'll notice what we call a base map that looks similar to this. And this is just an underlying image that you can use to help supplement the other data that you're going to turn on in your map. So the first things first, if you want to change the base map, if you want to change the underlying data that accompanies what you're querying, in the upper right hand corner there is a Set Base Map tool. So this Set Base Map tool allows you to choose the underlying base map that you are using in TIMS. Everything above this line, so we have 5 up here above this line, come from an external agency. ODOT does not maintain this data.
Stephen, I hate to jump in here real quick, but I'm definitely hearing some background noise. If everyone could please just double check, make sure you have your phone line muted. We'd really appreciate it because we want to make sure that we keep the presentation moving without any interruptions. Thanks.
Thanks, Victoria. And then below that line we have an ODOT base map. This ODOT base map is a base map that we actually maintain, and you can be assured that the roads and the infrastructure data that you see in here is data that ODOT actually maintains. So if you ever are using a base map and you have a question about the roads that are existing on the underlying base map, you can flip to this ODOT base map and see the exact road inventory that ODOT maintains. But it is completely up to you, whichever base map you choose to use. the application will remember. So next time you come into TIMS, the application will remember the base map of preference. So if you had this base map enabled, next time you come in, it's going to remember that and automatically turn that on. All right, so back into my toolbar over here. So the tool that is enabled when you open up Create a Map is the Set Visible Layers tool, the icon all the way on the left. This is where you're going to come to turn on data that you're going to view in the map. So all of our data here in TIMS is organized by what we call layer groupings. So the first layer grouping comprised of transportation-related assets. A lot of this data comes from within ODOT, various offices or sections here at ODOT that we pull data. A lot of this data is updated on a nightly basis. So for instance, our Tier 1, our very important assets like bridges or say culverts, that data we update actually every single night. Same with our project data that we already looked at. We update that data every single day. Some of the other data in here we update maybe weekly or bi-weekly or annually. It just all depends on the process cycles of when this data is updated, how important this data is, and when we need to refresh this data. When we get to the data glossary page a little later, I will show you how to determine when the data frequency of when this data sets are updated and when the last time the data was updated. But here under assets, we have lots of transportation related assets. Boundaries, if you want to add some boundary data to your map, we have lots of boundary information here, cities, townships, ODOT districts. We have some PUCO, some utility information down here, school districts, some political boundaries here. Environmental, so our office works closely with the Office of Environmental Services here at ODOT, and we have organized quite a large subset of data here specific to environmental regulations. Projects, so this is the same data that we just queried from the project search page, but we have it organized into a few different predefined queries in here. So you can view all the projects. You can view the projects based off of the next 4 fiscal years or the previous 4 fiscal years, or you can view the current projects. And we do have some project history data that is separate from the Ellis data that has some projects that go all the way back to, I think, the 20s or the 1930s. Roadway information. So our roadway here at ODOT is one of our largest assets. We have a lot of information here under roadway information, particular to the roadway or the road inventory. So we have pavement condition ratings. We have traffic counts. Traffic counts are a highly requested piece of data here at ODOT. We have national highway system, functional classifications, a handful of data sets all related to the roadway here under roadway information. Strategic transportation system. So these are some transportation related assets that are part of a 40-year strategic plan.
Hey Stephen, I'm going to mute everybody real quick on my end, or attempt to, and then I'll unmute you, so just give me 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, Stephen, you should be able to talk again.
All right, can you hear me?
I can, thanks.
Cool. And then lastly, we have a safety subset. So this safety layer grouping contains the previous 3 years of publicly available crash data. If you came to this webinar to get more information about perhaps the GCAT portion of TIMS, we are going to touch on that briefly at the end of this webinar. But this data here is kind of pared back publicly available crash information. It is limited. We've stripped out all of the sensitive information. But you can query the previous 3 years worth of crash data in the state of Ohio using the safety layer here. So in order to turn on any one of these layers, it's as simple as hovering over that layer and just turning it on, clicking on it. When a layer is enabled, it will turn green, and you should see it on the map. However, some of the layers here in our layer listing, you do actually need to zoom in before the layer appears on the map. Once you zoom past that certain threshold, the data should appear on the map. In the same sense, once you go in a little further, a lot of our layers do have labels associated with them. So when you zoom in past a certain threshold here for the bridge inventory, you can see the structure file number associated with that bridge. If I turn on, say, my road inventory too, now I have my road network that is color-coded. If I have a layer within TIMS that might have a different type of symbology, it might be color-coded like this. You can click on the Legend tab to actually see what how the data is symbolized. The legend should show you exactly how that data is symbolized here in the Create a Map. And you can toggle between legend and layers. You can turn on one or as many layers as you want, but keep in mind, the more data that you have turned on in the map, it might perform slightly slower. So in order to now get some information from these layers, the quickest and the easiest way to do so, back up to my toolbar, would be this Identify Features tool. So once I have data turned on in my map, I can click on Identify Features, and now you'll notice that my mouse has a set of crosshairs on it. So now I can hover over a layer and I can click, and that will return the information about the particular feature that I just clicked on. So this feature that I have highlighted now is the bridge. And so now I can see all of the attributes associated with that particular bridge. Notice that I also selected a road inventory segment from the road inventory file. So I can click on this drop down and then choose which layer I wanted to identify from. So if I have multiple layers turned on in my map, I just click on the feature that I want to highlight, and then I can change which layer I'm choosing from, which information I'm seeing here. So now I'm seeing the road inventory information, and you can see that that road inventory section is highlighted. And I can get all of the information about that particular piece of road. Now I'm going to click over here to highlight multiple sections, and you can see that now I have multiple sections from the same layer highlighted. I have 5 different features selected here. I can use these arrows to toggle between each one of those sections. And you can see that as I toggle, the new section is highlighted on my map. So that's the quickest and the easiest way to get information about a particular asset. We do have some other tools under Filter Data that allow you to query the data a little better. So I am going to come back to my Set Visible Layers, and I want to turn on another layer. I'm going to turn on my traffic counts. So this is traffic AADT, which is annualized average daily traffic. So if I come back here to my filter data, I have options to filter based off of the attributes in the data set, filter by geography, or filter by graphic. So filter by attribute uses the actual data that exists in that layer to build me a query, to build a query of the data set. So when you enable any of these filter tools, the first thing you need to do is choose which layer you have that you have enabled that you want to filter. So you do have to have at least one layer turned on. And then you can choose that layer that you want to filter, and you can then select one of the attributes from that layer. So if I wanted to choose county, I could choose county, choose my operator, and then I can start to type in the 3-digit county code. So I could run this right now and it would return all of the traffic segments that fall within Franklin County. Or I can add some more complexity to my filter by clicking this Add Filter tool. And now I can choose another attribute from that same layer. So if I wanted to choose the total count numbers, and let's say I wanted to select anything that's greater than 150,000. So these are my highly traveled roads. I could click search, and it's going to spin for a second, and then it'll highlight on your map. Once the data turns back on, it's kind of hard to see, but it'll highlight those segments on your map. If I turn off those other layers, so let me turn off the bridge inventory and turn off the traffic layer, you can now see that selected in blue are all of those segments that I just queried. Whoops. Accidentally clicked the back button. Apologize about that. So I'm going to run another query and to show you exactly how to interact with that data once you have a query built. So let me turn my bridges back on. The next filter tool is filter by geography. Actually, I'm going to use the culvert inventory because there are less points there. So if I filter by geography now, I can choose the layer that I want to filter from. And then I can choose to filter based off of a boundary. So based off of a county, an MPO, a district, or an urban area. So if I choose county, I could then select the county that I want to filter. I'll just choose Adams County. It'll highlight that on the map. And then I click search and it'll return all of the records that fall within that boundary. The time it takes for these filters to run is a product of how many features you're selecting. So if you are selecting a lot of features, it might take a couple seconds to run. There we go. So now I've selected 1,400 records. And you can see all of those records are now selected on my map. If I zoom back in, I have the rest of my layer here, but the ones highlighted blue are the features that fall within that boundary. So what I meant to show you before I screwed up last time is down here in your results table, you now have all of those results that you can scroll through. You can analyze the data down here. And you can also export that data. So if your workflow might be to select all of a certain asset that falls within a county or a city boundary, you could run this query, click Export Data, and then export that to Excel, KMZ, shapefile, or geodatabase. Also in the results table, we have a question mark next to each field name. So you can actually click on that question mark, and you can see the data definition associated with that particular field name. So the application isn't intelligent enough to know which layer you queried down here, but it does return all of the instances in the data glossary where that field name exists. So you can see what exactly that field is that you're dealing with. So if I find one, culvert file number only exists in the culvert data. You can see it's the unique identifier. Also, you can click on any one of these columns and sort ascending or descending on all of the attributes that are housed in that particular column. If I come back to my layers tool, my set visible layers, I also have a new result layer down here. So every time you build a filter or build a query and create a map, you do end up with one of these new buttons. And now you can toggle that query on and off. Now the last filter tool is a filter by graphic. So this allows you to draw your own shapes on the map and query data using that shape that you drew. So you can draw a point, a line, or a polygon. And you can actually build in a buffer too. So if I wanted to buffer this road here, I could click Draw. To begin my drawing, I just click on the map. And then to complete my drawing, just double click. And then I can define a buffer distance, let's say 1 mile. Click Buffer, and then that builds a buffer around the shape that I just drew. Now I can click Search, and it's going to search and return all of the features that fall within that drawing. Now if I come back to my Set Visible Layers tab, I now have my new filter result there, and I can interact between each one of these layers. Alright, so in order to keep this training moving, or this webinar moving, we do have about 25 minutes left. I'm just going to jump down and then show you some of these other tools that we do have available. So the Find Location tool allows you to find different locations within TIMS. You can find an address. Very straightforward. You just type in the address, click Find. It will drop a pin and zoom directly to that location. You can find a latitude and longitude in either decimal degrees or degrees, minutes, seconds. You can type in your favorite lat long here, click Find, and it will drop a flag and zoom you to that location. Or you can use the Click on Map tool to click on the map and extract that location. So once you've either typed something in or extracted it, you can still toggle between the two different formats, and it will translate real time between those. I'm going to come right back to the Find Log Point, but the Find Area allows you to find a geographic area by boundary, and it is one of the same 4 types of boundaries that we already used in our filter tool. So it's county, MPO, district, or urban area. So you can choose the type of area you want to find. Choose the name of that area, and it will highlight that on your map and center your map over that area. And then the last tool is a Find Log Point tool. So for those of you who are not familiar with the concept of linear referencing, every one of our routes within the state of Ohio has a route ID associated with it. We refer to this as our NLF ID. In order to find a location using the linear referencing, you can search by a route ID and what we refer to as a log point, which is essentially like a milepost along that route. So if you wanted to find a milepost along a specific route, you can search by county. You can start to type in your county, and it will return those records that meet that criteria. And then once I choose a county, it will return all of the routes that exist only in that county. I can choose my route. And then once I choose my route, it tells me these are the begin and the end, the minimum and the maximum values for that particular route in that particular county. So for Interstate 70 in Franklin County, my valid options are between 0 and milepost 24.9. So if I type something in between that, let's say 10.5, click Find, it will drop a flag on my map and zoom into that location. It will also provide that NLF ID of that route that I just queried. If you ever do business with ODOT, inevitably you're going to be asked to use some data that might have an NLF ID in it. And so you can use the TIMS application to gather what that ID is for that particular route. You can also use this Click on Map tool to click on a route and extract that information directly from the route. So if I zoom to another road here, and I use the Click on Map tool, it returns that NLF ID and then the corresponding log points associated with that. If anybody has questions about linear referencing, NLF IDs, log points, let's hook up after this class. You can send me an email or we can touch base when the webinar is done and we can talk more about it. Alright, the next set of tools here is cleverly named tools. So if you click this drop down, it gives you a few different options here. There is a measure tool that allows you to take measurements, and you can take areas, distances, or you can measure the state plane locations. So you choose your unit of measurement, click the measure tool, and then you can click on the map to begin your drawing. And then when you are done with your drawing, just double click and it will return the measurement up here. Now if you take a measurement, say you measure a distance or an area, and you want to change the unit of measurement after you've already drawn, you can do that and it will dynamically translate between those units of measurement. So that's a pretty cool feature. The next tool is a draw tool. So in a minute I'll show you how to print a map from TIMS, but you might have a need to draw some of your own data on TIMS. So you can use that draw tool to draw a point, a line, a polygon, or even some text on your map. So you can choose the type of graphic you want to draw. You can change the colors. Click the draw tool and then start clicking on the map to create your drawings. The next set of tools is a bookmark tool. So if you have a particular area, or maybe you're working on a particular project and you need to bookmark that area, you can type in a bookmark. Don't think I used my grammar right there, but you can click Add. And then now, next time you come into the map, you can click Zoom to that bookmark and it will return directly to that location that you bookmarked. That will remain in your browser information. So next time you come into TIMS on that same browser, that same machine, it will remember that bookmark. If anybody is familiar with the ODOT Path Web system, so this is a video log, a digital video log that we have of all our state maintained roads that is updated on a biannual cycle. So this ODOT Path Web allows you to click on the map and it it opens up the Path Web application for that particular location of where you clicked. This takes a couple minutes to demo and we are running out of time. So I'm not going to demo this now, but when you do click on the map, it will open up that other application. Currently, that other application does not work in Google Chrome. So if you open up that URL, you could just copy and paste that into Internet Explorer. But they are working on an updated version that does work in Chrome. The next tool is Map Channel. So similarly, you enable that tool, click on the map, and that opens up another external application with a couple different map views. So you have your Google Streets, you have your bird's eye view, and then you have your street view here. And you can interact with all of these dynamically. So again, we do not maintain that application either. So we do not maintain PathWeb or Map Channel, but we did see them as helpful tools that we wanted to link to in TIMS. Now the last tool here in Create a Map is this Add Data to Map. So if you have some of your own data that you might want to add to the map and see how it interacts, maybe see where it is located versus some of the data we already have in TIMS, you can add a shapefile, a KMZ, or you can add a spreadsheet to the map as long as that spreadsheet has certain information. So if it has linear referencing information, which is that NLF ID and log point, you can add those events. You can add latitude, longitude coordinates, or if you have addresses organized in the spreadsheet, you can upload those to the TIMS site. Again, this takes a couple minutes to demo, so I'm not going to demo that today. But you can just click the Add Data button, choose the type, and then follow the instructions to upload that data. And then lastly, on Create a Map, we have two tools on the right-hand side next to the Set Base Map tool. The first of which is a Print Map tool. This allows you to print a PDF of the map that you have on your screen. You can print 3 different sizes currently. And when you click that, it generates a PDF map of everything that you can see on your Create a Map page here. So if I turned on some data, or at least moved to a place where I had data on my map, I could click this Print Map. It should spin for just a second, and then it will automatically pop up that PDF map. Currently, our tools are not smart enough to add a legend or an intelligent title. So it is just a map that has a timestamp on it, and it shows you all the data that you have enabled on your screen. There's that map. We also have another share tool called Share Map with Your Friends. And this tool actually gives you a URL that you can copy and paste. And what this does is it opens up your Create a Map page, zooms directly into the location that you had turned on, and turns on automatically all of the data that you had enabled in your map. This doesn't share any queries that you had, any drawings that you have on your map. It only has the predefined layers that we have enabled in TIMS. But it is a useful tool if you need to share some of this information with a colleague or a friend. So that is Create a Map. I know this was a pretty quick overview. By all means, type your questions if you have questions. I'm going to keep moving to keep this webinar on schedule, though. So the next page I want to demo is this data download page. So data download has layer groupings similar to what we saw in Create a Map. But this allows you to just select a layer and download the complete inventory without having to build queries or anything. You can download to Excel, a shapefile, KMZ, or a geodatabase here. This is fairly quickly. Every time we update a data set, we pre-package these data downloads. So all you have to do is click download, and it should automatically download to the format that you selected. You can download one, or you can choose multiple data sets at once and download those all at the same time. Moving right along, the standard PDF maps. We do have a handful of predefined map templates set up in TIMS, most of which deal with project information. We are constantly working on coming up with ideas for new maps. So if anybody has an idea, let us know. But you can choose the type of map that you want to build. We do have a functional class map as well. Choose the area of interest. Choose the size. And then you can click Generate Map. And what that does is it uses the predefined template, but pulls the latest data, the latest information into this map PDF. So if you printed off a map today, but that work plan changed, you could print off another map tomorrow, and the map would be identical. However, the underlying data would be dynamic. So every time we update that data, these maps change. The next portion of the site I want to touch on is the map viewer page. So each one of these map viewers takes you to a site that looks very similar to the Create a Map page. However, you have customized content based off of a district or an office that we built one of these custom map viewers for. So for example, if I wanted to look at structures, so we worked with the Office of Structural Engineering to build one of these map viewers. So instead of seeing all of the layers that we have available in Create a Map, we only have a few pieces of information here that are specific to certain queries that they wanted to see. So instead of turning on one layer that shows all the bridges, we have a couple predefined queries here that might be more useful to you. Again, under map viewers, feel free to explore these, and we do have some useful map viewers already created, and we're constantly looking for ideas for new map viewers to create. Lastly is the data glossary page. So this data glossary page we touched on briefly in Create a Map. All of our data sets in TIMS have a set of data definitions tied to them. So you can search for a data set, and you can see all of the columns, all of the attributes that are in that particular data set. You can see a little bit of information about what that particular attribute means. On the left-hand side, we have an information button that you can hover over, and you can see when the data was last refreshed and when the data is scheduled to be updated. So this particular data set is updated daily, and it was last updated this morning on the 15th. Also, if there is a hyperlink to maybe a site that might give you some more useful information about that data set, there is a View Additional Information button that takes you to that site. So you can also download, if you have a data set that you use very frequently, you can choose that data set here and click Export, and you can download all of those data definitions to a spreadsheet. All right, so I'm going to navigate back to the home page. We do have a new portion of the TIMS site that has been in production for about 11 months now. I think it was close to this time last year that we pushed it out. But it is this crash data search page. So this is the one portion of TIMS that is not publicly available. When you come to the crash data search page, when it opens, you will be prompted to log in. If you do not have a login, you can click this new user button, and this takes you to information about how to request the login. And essentially what this crash mapping tool is it allows you to browse to query all of the crash data that ODOT gets from the Office of Public Safety, and then you can view it in the map, and we have a couple additional tools that are specific to the crash data. So I do have just a couple minutes left, so I will show you briefly how to log in and query some of this crash data. However, they do have the Office of Public Safety, or ODOT's Office of Safety, does have some trainings and webinars that are specific to this GCAT page. So if anybody is interested in that, Victoria will be able to help you find that information. So once you have a login, you can click Login, and then it brings you to this crash data search page. You do need to choose a year because we have tons and tons of records. You can choose one or multiple years. You can choose a month or multiple months. And then we have a handful of tabs here that allow you to further whittle down the type of information that you're looking for. So crash type or crash severity, you can choose one or many different crash severities that you want to include in your query. If you know the document number of the crash, you can type that in here and go directly to that one crash record. Some additional emphasis areas. What were some other factors related to that particular crash incident? Some driver vehicle information you can choose. And then last, you can choose a location. So if you have an entire county that you want to query, you can choose that county. You can choose multiple counties. You can also choose a township or a village or a city. And then the last option is the NLF ID Search. So you can actually add a segment of road and query all the crashes just on that one segment of road. So if you're doing a corridor analysis or an intersection analysis, you can actually add multiple sections. But you can choose the county, the route, and then the log points that you want to query, add those sections, and then when you're done building your criteria, you can either choose to view in map, or you can download that data directly to a spreadsheet. So once you click either one of those, it'll spin for a second, and then it'll tell you how many records your query yielded. So this particular query yielded 35,000 results, and so now I can choose to view that in the map. This might take a second to load actually, because there are so many records. But this takes you back to the Create a Map page, and it should center you and zoom you into the location of where your crash records are displaying. And then once all those records do load, you will see that data appear on the map.
Stephen, your webinars just keep getting better and better all the time. But we only have about 3 minutes left. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted to let you know.
No, you're fine.
I learn new things every time. So.
Thanks, Victoria. So yeah, if anybody has any questions, or I apologize if you came just to see the crash data. Specific webinars directly directed specifically to the crash data. Now, Victoria, can you provide that information?
I did. I put it in the chat pod. I gave them a link not only to the GCAT in-person training, but also a link to our YouTube site where we have some pre-recorded GCAT webinars as well, awesome. With GCAT being in the TIMS system. Also, if anyone has any questions, I did unmute everyone through the system, but you can feel free to unmute yourself there by right-clicking on the microphone next to your phone number or name and click unmute, so that way you can ask questions directly. You're doing a great job because no one entered any questions in the chat pod, so they must have all been getting it or all making their list that they're going to email you later.
Either that or I just talk too much and confuse everybody.
Yeah. You do a wonderful job. Like I said, I learned. Oh, here we go. One question here. Is there a way to quickly view crash reports from the TIMS system, or is GCAT the only way to view those?
This GCAT system is the only way to get to the crash reports. So earlier I showed you there were a handful of, there were 3 publicly available data sets. Those do not link to the crash reports because that is sensitive information potentially. So you do have to query the data through GCAT, but then once you select that information, you will have a hyperlink that you can click that'll take you to the crash report. Good question. And they will cover that, I'm sure, in the GCAT training.
I will get another GCAT webinar scheduled with Mike McNeil. He unfortunately was ill the last time we had one scheduled, but I'll get that information out on our listserv emails here within the next week, and I'll see if I can actually get 2 dates out of him, so that way if it doesn't fit your schedule for one, hopefully you can get in the other. I encourage you to look at the other recordings, though, that we have out there on our YouTube site. And with that, it's 11 o'clock, so I want to thank you, Stephen, for doing a fantastic job on this webinar, and thank everyone for joining us today. If the recording was successful, I will definitely send a link out, and otherwise, everybody have a great rest of your Tuesday. Thank you.
Victoria, please feel free to email me if anybody has any questions.
Thanks.
Thanks.